Hi, everybody. My name is Chieh Wu, and welcome to my paper for Europe's 2020 on the topic of instance-wise feature grouping. For the full paper, you can find it directly from Europe's 2020 proceedings. So, for the topic of classification, very often we would like the classifiers to essentially justify and explain why they make certain predictions. So one way to do this is basically to have the algorithm explain their predictions by telling us how they categorize the features into different groups. So for example, after training, here, let's say each one of these is a sample. We would like the algorithm to tell us things such as, well, we group these two features together because we consider them as noise. And we group these two together because they seem to be just redundant information, that they are basically giving the same information. Or maybe you'll create another group that says we group these features together because they are most relevant, they are most predictive of the labels. Now, what would be even better is that for each sample, it gives us a different grouping so that it's instance-wise. Well, this one, maybe this is the noise, but maybe these ones for this sample is the noise, or maybe the noise is for this sample. So we call this instance-wise feature grouping. And this general topic is a way to basically group the features together and after classification and identify like which groups are grouped together due to what reason. Now, an example of this application would be, for example, here is the image of for MNIST, the famous MNIST, and here are some of the existing algorithms out there that can do this. So what we did is, well, after training, we asked each algorithm to tell us the pixels it considered as the most important pixels, and then draw those pixels in white while leaving the not important pixels in black. So one of the more recent L2X, this is actually 2018. This one, well, if you look at the results, you can't really tell why these pixels give us a 7. You can't really tell here either. Another algorithm called CAE does a very good job actually for 8. So you can tell this is an 8. However, CAE is not instance-wise. Therefore, it can only give you one, and the most obvious one. Therefore, every single one of them is the same. You can adjust it to this thing called the SCAE, of which then it does a little bit better. You can see the 0, and you can kind of see the 8. Currently, the industry standard is called the SHOP right here. And this does a pretty decent job in that right here, you can tell this is an 8. You can tell this is a 7. This is a 0. So the SHOP does a pretty decent job. And you can see why the ability to be able to pick pixels, well, features, doesn't have to be image. If it's images, then it's the most important pixel. Why this is important and why this is helpful. So for example, one, it helps us interpret the results. Why is this image a 7? Well, it's a 7 because the algorithm picked out pixels in the shape of a 7, and that these pixels are in the shape of a 7, therefore it is an image of a 7. Second, it helps us confirm if the algorithm is learning the correct pattern. So for example, the algorithm can say that this is a car, which is correct. However, maybe it's a car because of these pixels. So what's happening is that the algorithm may be just learning any picture with a license plate is a car, when that's not really true. So the ability to pick out pixels can help us basically make sure that the algorithm is learning what is intended. Lastly, it can help us debug mistakes. So if we had an image of only a license plate and yet it labeled as a car, we would realize very quickly, well, it's a mistake because it's only looking at license plate. So next, we compare it against ours. So these are the previous ones, and this one is our model. With our model, notice when we ask it to plot the most important pixels and draw them in white, it ends up giving us very reasonable and interpretable results. So if we ask again, why did you determine this image is 9? Well, it returned the pixels in the shape of a 9 and compare this, our result, to what's existing out there. The differential is pretty remarkable. So this experiment was repeated again with fashion in them. And you can see how well we're able to pick out the most important pixels that helps classification. Now, this is, of course, useful for images, character recognition. And in images, there's also like medical purpose, right? So in fMRI, for example, I think, or some kind of scan, you can detect tumors. And this algorithm will be able to identify the pixels that it consider as important during prediction. Sometimes maybe humans would not be able to pick it out as easily. So another example of experiment that we ran is on smoking data. So we wanted to know if there's any genetic identifiers that help us identify smokers versus non-smokers. So this is right here is the original data, and each column is a one patient, it's just one person, and we pick out a set of genes and then measure the expression. So each person, we like record the genetic expression of a bunch of genes. And from the original data, there's no obvious difference between smokers and non-smokers. And what we want to know is we want to ask the algorithm after training to distinguish smokers and non-smokers, which set of features are most like important to characterize a smoker versus which ones are most important to characterize a non-smoker. And we basically ask the algorithm. So for each person, we ask them the most important genes and plot those in white. And a pattern you can see emerges. It appears that the algorithm has identified these set of genes as the best identifier of non-smokers. And it has identified these set of genes as identifier of smokers. And it's able to, of course, this is instance-wise. Therefore, there are examples like this person, for example, right here. The profile actually will look very similar to a smoker. So this is instance-wise. Even though it's instance-wise, it may not give you the same result. You can kind of use it to see the pattern. So here, they help us basically identify. So it's actually a very useful learning tool. It's not saying that these genes are definitely the most important, even though it's very using these genes will help you predict smoking or non-smoking status very easily. But it's useful in terms of research so that once we do this kind of analysis, researchers can go back and study them and say, oh, that's why the algorithm picked this. So currently, not only is it able to pick out the most important features and group them together and tell us how they are grouped together, it's actually the most accurate classifier compared to other interpretable models. So our one is called GI, the blue one. And regardless of how many features you pick, Ours perform obviously the best. It performs really, really well at being able to predict like particular outcomes. And therefore, the features that we discover are indeed very predictive and interpretable in this case of like the images we have shown you. So this is the work that we've done that was submitted to NERPS and that will be presented this year. And let me go over again. My name is Chieh Wu, and my co-author Aria Masumi. Both of us are co-first authors, first authors, and Jennifer is my advisor. And the other co-authors are Ting Ting and Zifeng. We're all from Northeastern. And as for me, you can find more of my work directly on my website on chiehwu.com. And here's some of the other work and publications I have done. So this year, this right here is the NERVS 2020. But besides that, we actually submitted 2 more NERVS paper that was accepted in the workshop. So feel free to come check it out. Last year, I also had another separate paper that was accepted. If you're interested, feel free to check out the video for that as well. So thank you for visiting and watching this video presentation. Bye-bye.